The smell of 10W30 is a permanent part of my skin. It does not matter how many times I scrub my hands with that gritty orange soap at the end of a shift, there is always a faint metallic scent clinging to my knuckles. My name is Alex. I am 32 years old, and for the last 10 years my world has been measured in torque specs, brake pads, and the steady tick of a cooling engine. I own Alex's Auto. It is a 3-bay shop on the edge of town, right where clean suburban roads start to crack into older neighborhoods with tall trees and tired houses. I do not get fancy sports cars. I get the reliable ones, the exhausted ones, pickup trucks with rusted beds, family SUVs that have seen too many soccer practices. I spend most days under engines that have been pushed a little too hard for a little too long. My mornings never change. I unlock the gate at 7:30. I roll up the heavy metal bay doors and let that loud rattling sound wake the place up. Then I head to the back corner and start the coffee. The machine is an old Mr. Coffee that probably should have been retired years ago. The brew is bitter and dark, but it works. By 8:15, the first customer shows up, already stressed because their whole life depends on a car that just started making a strange noise. It is a solitary job. I have a kid named Mark who helps on weekends, but most days it is just me and the radio. Talk shows, old rock songs, noise that fills the air without asking for anything back. There is a quiet satisfaction in fixing things. You find what is broken. You make it right. For a moment, the world makes sense. At noon, I take my break. I wipe the grease from my hands and walk across the street to the daily grind. I order the same turkey club on rye. Martha does not even ask anymore. I sit in the corner booth, look out the window at my shop, and breathe. And then, there is Sarah. If you asked me about Sarah Miller a year ago, I would have said she was a memory, a ghost from a different life. We grew up as fence neighbors. Our backyards touched, divided by a sagging wooden fence we eventually broke so we could crawl through it easier. We were inseparable. She was the smart one. I took apart bikes. She read books meant for older kids. Even back then, she looked at people like she was figuring them out. The promise happened when we were kids. We were sitting on the tailboard of my dad's old truck, legs swinging. The sun was hot on my neck. I had just told her I was going to invent a car that ran on soda. She laughed. I smiled and said, "When we grow up, I'll marry you." I did not know what marriage meant. I just knew I liked having her there. She looked at me, serious as anything, and said, "I hope you keep that promise." Then life happened. No big fight, no dramatic ending, just distance. She went to a university 3 states away. She built a life in the city. I stayed. Took over the shop when my dad could not work anymore. For years, she was just a name on a screen. A birthday message. A like on a photo. She moved back 3 months ago to take care of her grandmother after a bad fall. The first time I saw her again, I almost did not recognize her. I was leaning over an engine when I saw clean white sneakers at the edge of my vision. I stood up, wiped sweat from my face, and there she was. Shorter hair, city clothes, but the same eyes. "Hey, Alex," she said. My brain stalled. "Sarah, wow, hi." She smiled and said she had a screeching noise coming from her car. I checked the belt, tightened it. We talked for a few minutes, polite, careful. Then she left. After that, we waved. Sometimes she stopped to ask how my week was. It felt friendly but distant. 2 adults with shared history that belonged to another lifetime. I thought that was all it would ever be. The rain changed that. It did not start slow. It slammed against the metal roof of the shop like the sky had finally snapped. By late afternoon, the streetlights were already on. I was finishing a brake job when my phone buzzed. It was Sarah. She was pulled over on Route 9 near the old quarry. Her car had died. It was pouring. I told her not to move. I grabbed my keys and drove out. When I reached her, her hazard lights were fading. She looked small inside the car. The rain soaked through my clothes as soon as I stepped out. The belt was shredded. The damage was not fixable on the roadside. I told her to get in my truck. She did not argue. The drive back was quiet. The storm was loud. The cab felt too small, filled with old papers, tools, and the smell of work. She was shivering. I turned the heat all the way up. When we reached my house, the power was out. I lit a candle, gave her a sweatshirt, heated soup on the gas stove. She came out of the bathroom looking like the girl I remembered, only older and tired. We sat at the table in candlelight while the storm raged outside. "You're a good man, Alex," she said. I brushed it off, but when she touched my sleeve, the air shifted. The silence grew heavy. Familiar, loaded. I offered her the guest room. She agreed. That night, lying on the couch, listening to the rain and the sound of her moving quietly down the hall, I understood something I had not before. That promise was never a joke. It was just waiting. The storm cleared by morning, but whatever shifted inside my house did not. The air felt different, like something had been moved and not put back where it belonged. I woke up on the couch with a stiff neck and the faint smell of her shampoo still hanging in the kitchen. For a few seconds I forgot why it was there. Then I heard the soft sound of a door opening. Sarah stepped into the hallway, barefoot, wearing that oversized sweatshirt. Her hair was still damp, pulled back loosely. She looked like she belonged there, and that thought hit me harder than it should have. "Morning," she said quietly. "Morning," I replied, sitting up. "Coffee's bad, but it's hot." She smiled. "That's kind of perfect." We did not talk much while we drank it. Not because it was awkward, but because it felt fragile, like one wrong word would break something we did not yet understand. When I drove her to her grandmother's house later, she thanked me again. Her hand lingered on my arm for half a second longer than necessary before she got out. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. Her car was stuck waiting on parts, and suddenly I was driving her everywhere. To the pharmacy, to the grocery store, back and forth from her grandmother's place. Each ride chipped away at the distance we had kept. She brought coffee sometimes. Once she brought pastries and sat on a stool in the shop while I worked, reading headlines out loud just to hear me react. It became routine without either of us naming it. One afternoon, I went over to her grandmother's house to fix a leaky faucet. It was a small job, took 10 minutes. But Sarah was working in the other room, talking in that sharp city voice I barely recognized. Confident. Controlled. When she finished and leaned in the doorway, she looked exhausted. "Sometimes I feel like I move words around all day and nothing actually changes," she said. I did not know what to say to that. I just told her the faucet was fixed. She looked at my hands. "You fix things people depend on." "It's just pipes and bolts," I said. She shook her head. "It's stability." That word sat between us for a long time. The closeness grew in quiet ways, not dates, not labels, just presence. Her sitting on the workbench while I closed up. Me helping her grandmother carry groceries. Shared dinners that were never called dinners. One night, we stood too close fixing a cabinet hinge. Our shoulders touched. Neither of us moved away. I wanted to kiss her. I did not. It felt like something you only get one chance to do right. The town noticed before either of us said anything out loud. People watched, commented, smiled, too knowingly. It got under my skin, but it wore on her. She heard things at the grocery store, questions about when she was going back to her real life. Then one evening, she told me her job wanted her back in the city. She said it calmly, but her hands were cold when I held them. The porch light buzzed above us. Neighbors' windows glowed across the street. The pressure pressed in from everywhere. I asked her why she was staying. She said she did not know if wanting was enough. That week dragged. Her car got fixed. I handed her the keys like I was handing over an ending. I did not ask her to stay. I did not ask her to leave. Sunday evening, I sat on my porch watching the sun drop behind the trees. The broken fence was still there, covered in ivy now. I heard a car pull in. She walked up the steps without saying anything and sat beside me. "I resigned," she said. The relief knocked the air out of me. She told me she was choosing something else. Something real. She took my hand and said she was done running. We did not kiss. We just sat there, holding on. Time did the rest. The town adjusted. The whispers faded. Life settled. We built something slow and solid. One summer evening, a year later, we sat on the tailgate of my truck by the quarry, sharing sandwiches and quiet. She leaned into me and mentioned the promise. I smiled and told her I remembered. "I always hoped you would," she said. That night, with the stars above us and her weight warm against my side, I knew something deep and certain. Some promises do not expire. They wait. Life after that decision did not turn into a movie. It turned into mornings, errands, and small adjustments that slowly stitched us together. Sarah did not suddenly stop being the city woman, and I did not become someone new overnight. We stayed who we were, and somehow that started to fit. She took a teaching job at the local college 2 days a week and picked up consulting work in the next town over. It was different from her old life, but she did not look smaller in it. She looked lighter. She would come by the shop in the afternoons sometimes, sit on the step near the bay door, and grade papers while I worked. Customers started recognizing her as part of the place. Not a visitor, not a roomer, just Sarah. At home, the house changed. Not because we planned it, but because she noticed things. The kitchen walls did not have to be gray. The spare room did not have to collect dust. She did not take over, she asked. That mattered to me. I had lived alone a long time. She respected the space while quietly making it shared. One night, we painted the kitchen together. I ended up with more paint on my arms than the walls. She laughed so hard she had to sit on the floor. When I sat down next to her, paint roller forgotten, she leaned her head on my shoulder without thinking. That was the moment it stopped feeling like we were careful. The kiss happened later, not in the kitchen, not during a big talk. It happened on a normal evening when nothing else was happening. We were standing in the driveway, saying goodnight, and neither of us moved to leave. I looked at her. She looked at me. It was quiet, easy. When I kissed her, it felt like finishing a sentence we had started years ago. From then on, it was simple. Not easy, but simple. Her grandmother passed peacefully that winter. We stood together at the small service, hands linked. I watched Sarah move through grief with grace and honesty. She did not pull away. She leaned in. That told me more than any promise ever could. The shop stayed busy. The town stayed small. People stopped watching us like a story and started seeing us like a couple. We argued sometimes. About schedules. About money. About whose turn it was to cook. But we never argued about whether we belonged together. One night in early spring, I found the old box in the attic. Inside it was junk. Old photos. Rusted tools. And at the bottom, taped to a scrap of cardboard, a faded popsicle stick. I held it for a long time. I did not tell her right away. I went to the shop the next day and opened the small drawer in my toolbox where I kept important things. I added something new to it that afternoon. I waited. Weeks passed. Life stayed steady. Then one evening I asked her to go for a drive. No reason given. She did not ask questions. She trusted me now. I drove us out to the quarry. We sat on the tailgate, the air warm, the town lights far below. I handed her a popsicle stick without saying a word. She stared at it, confused at first. Then her eyes filled. "You kept this," she said. "I keep things that matter," I replied. She laughed softly and wiped her eyes. "You know I was serious that day." "I know," I said. "I was not." She turned toward me, searching my face. "And now?" I reached into my jacket pocket and held out the ring. "Now I am." She did not cry this time. She smiled, big and sure. She said yes before I even finished asking. When she leaned into me, holding me tight, I whispered the words I should have said a long time ago. "I'm keeping the promise." Quote. She rested her forehead against mine and said something I will carry forever. I never stopped hoping. We did not rush after that night. The ring did not change how we woke up or how we shared coffee or how we argued about whose turn it was to buy groceries. What it changed was the quiet space inside me. The part that had always felt like it was waiting for something finally went still. We told people slowly. Her coworkers first, then my regulars at the shop. The reactions were simple. Smiles, handshakes, a few jokes. The town took it in stride. We were no longer news. We were routine. And that felt right. We chose not to make a big wedding. No long guest list. No pressure. Just something honest. The quarry felt like the right place. It had watched us grow up, drift apart, find our way back. On a warm afternoon, under a sky so clear it felt unreal, we stood there with a small group of people who actually knew us. When Sarah walked toward me, there was no music, just wind and birds and the sound of my own heart. She looked calm, certain, like she had finally landed somewhere solid. Our vows were simple. No big speeches, no promises we did not understand, just commitment, choice, effort. When it was over, she squeezed my hand and whispered, "We did good." Life after marriage did not suddenly shine brighter, it deepened. We fell into rhythms that felt earned. She helped me expand the shop's online presence. I helped her fix things around the house she never thought she would care about. We made dinner together most nights. We sat on the porch and talked about nothing important at all. Sometimes we went quiet together, and that silence never felt empty. One evening, months later, we sat on that same back porch. The old fence was still there, ivy thick and stubborn. The sun dipped low, turning the yard gold. She leaned into me and smiled. Funny how it all came back to this fence. I nodded. Funny how it never really left, quote. She rested her head on my shoulder. "You know," she said softly, "when I cried that day, it wasn't because you broke a promise." I waited. "It was because I was scared you had forgotten it," quote. I kissed the top of her head. I didn't forget. I just didn't understand it yet. The world stayed ordinary after that. Cars broke, jobs changed, seasons passed. But nothing felt unfinished anymore. The promise was never about getting married. It was about choosing to stay. And this time, I did.